We've got $50, let's go make some big money. First up here, talking about Copenhagen, we've got some pretty interesting data I want to break down. Now this data right here is going to be a representation of the past 6 majors. Obviously RMR is coming in at the top in this orange here. Copenhagen is going to be this slightly less orange dot right here. And as you can see, it's coming in the second worst in all of the categories. This is extremely poor demand we're seeing for Copenhagen right here, barely beating out Rio. And we know Rio was extremely low demand. Now with that being said, it's not necessarily going to make it a good or bad investment, as obviously we have a lot of factors that play into this. I will definitely say when you're looking at these capsules right here, make sure you know specifically what you're doing if you're trying to make an investment into it. I definitely think there's going to be a lot more opportunity if you're really looking to do so. We know how long these sales last. I won't be making any investments just today, but if it's something you really want to go into, I'm not going to explicitly tell you no, but the data right now is not in a great position to support this being one of the best investments. And we can look at Paris capsules as well. Obviously they are in a very dire position right now, down 40% from that original 75% off sale price. They're looking at 14-15 cents. I think that's definitely something that's going to be extremely important in your decision making process. SkinSwap is today's sponsor, and they're also sponsoring you with the top link in the description. They're here to cater to all of your CS2 and Rust skins need, as they're the top place for buying on some brand new skins, selling off your old skins, or trading your new CS2 skins for some new ones as well. They've got everything, and transactions are taking under 30 seconds right now. They also offer the most competitive rate out there, as a massive 40% deposit bonus if you just top up today, and their selling features one of the best. With an instant cash out and many different payout options, there's no reason not to try them out today. Now talking about my favorite area of the case market, we're finally starting to see some movement and some signs of life, and actually it's looking very promising in the very short term here. We can see that the danger zone case, one of my favorites, has started to increase quite significantly. Nothing absolutely crazy, but this is a very good sign considering we haven't seen too much movement from this or a lot of the other cases in the past couple of months. Now with that being said, obviously we got to look at our unboxing numbers. We can see that we're still seeing very consistent demand for some of these cases. Not every case you're going to invest into is going to be a perfect investment. Make sure you're using these unboxing numbers right here to make sure you're making a smart decision. We also like to look at the supply or the estimated supply numbers as I provide right here. Obviously, make sure you take this with a grain of salt as it's an estimate, but it's very good and useful information to get a rough gauge of potentially how many of these cases might potentially be out there. Obviously, I would definitely stick more towards the unboxing numbers and your price graphs right here. Those are going to be a little bit more stable, a little bit more data backed, but it's very good to look at as many sources as you can when we're talking about these cases. A lot of the cases right now are just sitting in a very interesting predicament because I honestly think they're going to have a very strong period of growth, but they're just waiting for the perfect opportunity to do so. Right now, there's not really too much going on inside the game. Obviously, the player numbers are growing and they're growing quite significantly, which is a really good sign. I honestly think if we see an operation or some major update, we're going to see that short-term price drop down like we always do, but I think we're going to then see a huge piece of growth right after, just because so many people are going to be coming into the game, so many people are going to be investing money into the game, and it's going to be a perfect opportunity for so many people. If you're not invested into cases right now, I don't think you're going to be able to capitalize off of that growth perfectly unless you're trying to buy at a bottom of an operation, but that's not necessarily the most safe option. Talking about the rest of our capsule market, we've got our data for Paris right here, and it's extremely interesting. Specifically, a couple big things I want to point out. None of the challenger glitters actually saw an increase in the application numbers during this time. Very interesting considering if we want to look at the hollows, almost all of them saw a pretty significant increase in the demand for these stickers. Very interesting here, but if we want to talk about the other two capsules, the legends and the contenders, not too much out of the ordinary, I would personally say. The couple big things I do want to point out, almost all of the legends and almost all of the contenders hollows saw a pretty significant increase for the application demand, which is not too unexpected. Paris hollows are now extremely cheap if you want to look at the prices on screen right now. Many of them are sitting at $1 to $2, and honestly, for a transparent or a no background sticker, they are one of the best bang for your bucks out there at the current moment. I can definitely see why people are definitely applying them. Looking at this data right here, you can see that the challenger sticker capsule is still the least applied out of all of them, and now it's coming to a significant margin as the legends and the contenders are both approaching very similar numbers, especially for those glitters and those hollows. When we look at the challengers capsule, it's 50% or more less in all of the categories except the gold for the legends capsule. It's very low in the amount of demand that this capsule is currently holding when it comes to the sticker application numbers. Looking at our Antwerp data right here, we can see that nothing too much is out of the ordinary. If we want to look at the hollows, we've got a couple specific ones that are going ahead and seeing increases in the amount of application numbers. Most of them are just kind of up or down slightly, very close to their previous month numbers, and I would definitely say this is something to keep your eye on if you're looking to make an Antwerp investment, but I don't think this is anything too crazy data-wise. And finally, Stockholm is definitely here as well. Very similar situation, except in one big area, and that's going to be the hollows. If we want to look at this right here, we can see that almost all of the hollows, especially inside of the challengers and the contenders capsule, have seen some pretty significant increases in the amount of applications that they've had. This is extremely interesting because obviously these are a purple tier compared to the pink tier for the other two capsules, but I definitely think it's something that if you want to keep your eye on Stockholm, I think there's a lot of potential here because it's definitely overlooked the fact that the hollows are purple rather than the pink tier for the Antwerp, the Paris, and all of these other capsules later down the line. Now, just over about a month ago, we saw some pretty interesting news, and that was going to be that the fact that Dust 2 is now going to be returning to the active duty rotation when it comes to majors. Now, this is extremely important when it comes to souvenir packages. I want to point out just how important it is to understand the souvenir package dynamic right now. If we want to look at the Dust 2 souvenir packages over the past 6 months, we can see a very significant decrease. But the truth is, this is not something too unexpected. If you know how souvenir packages work, they lose out a ton of demand once the major actually finishes, and most of them don't really have any unboxings that actually happen afterwards. But the biggest thing is the fact that people thought Dust 2 was going to be significantly different. They were investing into Dust 2 for the long haul because they thought for some reason Valve would not bring it back. And there's two important things to note here. One, Valve is always going to be doing what's in their best interest, not yours as an investor. But two, Valve is at the end of the day going to be destroying souvenir packages as an investment just because there's unlimited supply and very little demand in the new format. First up, for what I'm going to be buying, I'm grabbing a Sticker 2 capsule. This is one of my favorite investments to make when it's super cheap, and right now it's at the cheapest point it's been at in the past year. Absolutely insane. I think there's great value here. If we want to look at it, this is something I call the indicator because the truth is it's got one of the highest peaks and it's always peaking when the market is peaking. Therefore, the market's in a rather low time, at least according to this capsule right here. And I think once the demand picks up, this thing is going to absolutely skyrocket, potentially if we see a repeating trend like we've seen in the past. Second thing I'm going to be picking up is some snakebite cases. Now, honestly speaking, the snakebite is not in the most prime position right now, but when we're talking about rare cases, it's one, the cheapest opportunity to get into the game. Two, it's going to be something I'm going to be holding for a very significant amount of time. This is a long-term investment. But three, it's one of the cases that hasn't really recovered from the major drop down we saw because of the buff ban. Therefore, it's got the opportunity right now to get in at a little bit of a cheaper price point. I think it's going to be a very long-term hold, but it's definitely something that's at least a super cheap price point to enter. Number three is going to be the Antwerp Contenders capsule. Now, be completely honest, the entire capsule market right now is not something that has been on a very strong trajectory. We can obviously see that by the graphs on screen right now, but when we're talking about capsules that I personally see a long-term future with, the Antwerp Contenders is one that I've always been pulling for. The stickers inside of it are unique, they've got a good amount of demand because of them, and it's got those unique options as well, and therefore I definitely think there is some potential with this capsule long-term. It's going to be the overall sticker market that needs to shift for this to actually be a super profitable investment in the short term here. Finally, the last investment we're going to be making is into the CS20 case. Now, I absolutely despise the CS20 case, you probably know that already, but the truth is it's at an extremely cheap price point for some of the rare cases right now, relatively speaking. The demand on it is not particularly impressive. Overall, I think this case is going to be one that's swept up in the hype, and therefore because it's so cheap already, it offers that opportunity of an investment. I don't like this case, but at the end of the day, I gotta set my personal feelings aside, and I do still think there is some profit potential here. But that's all I got. Well, thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.